And here is this week's installment of Ezekiel Kralen's ongoing story of the two little dogs. This one's titled, Everyone's Life is Falling Apart. Ezekiel Kralen wrote, Email Correspondence, March 30th. Subject, last Friday night, a non-Deke report continued, March 30th, morning. So just who was this scalawag I had wished to steer clear of that night, or any other night or day for that matter? Scooter. Lucky me. Now this foolish fellow had exited my building a few days prior, accompanied by another, while I sat outside under the setting sun with the pups, and he waved at me in passing. Hey there, buddy, how's it going? He greeted in a jovial manner. Put off by his faux display of amity, I nonetheless raised a hand back in greeting, said, oh, just fine, thanks, and resumed scritching Flacco's belly, grateful he didn't waste my time further in pointless badinage. So last Friday night, when I stepped out to buy soda and he caught me in the headlights, so to speak, I decided to play the same hail fellow well met ruse right back at him, giving jolly old St. Nick a run for his money to boot. Oh ho, looky here, it's Scooter, I cheerfully exclaimed as I drew near. What are you doing outside this cold night instead of hanging indoors with Carlson? But he had already resumed staring into his Android device once he spotted me and did not look back up when I approached. Instead, he mumbled something I could not comprehend, so asked, What did you say? I didn't hear you. Again he mumbled, so again I asked him to repeat himself, and he finally looked up at me for a brief second and stated clearly this time, My whole life is falling apart. Wham! Instantly I realized he's setting me up, typical speed queen ploy with which I am way too familiar thanks to Deke's frequent imposing machinations over many years. Manufacturing a crisis in a maneuver to soften my heart and ultimately my wallet, playing on the homeless factor for good measure. Really? Sorry to hear that, I replied, feigning concern. I was tempted to spew a clever retort, such as, everyone's life is falling apart. Haven't you noticed? Welcome to the club. Or, my life fell apart years ago, and I'll be picking up the pieces till the day I die. Instead, after waiting a moment for him to say more, which he didn't, I then added, I don't know what to say, but just keep moving ahead. Push forward, believe in yourself. I've known other people whose lives have fallen apart, but they pull out of it and wind up in a better space. Whenever I'm in the dumps because something bad just happened to me, I make a point of putting a smile on someone else's face without burdening them with my own woes. I find it a useful strategy that makes climbing out of whatever rut I'm in a lot easier. But Scooter just sat there, slumped over his smartphone and glaring at it with disinterest, then a few seconds mumbled something else without looking up at me. Again I couldn't make out his words, so bent over to be closer to him and said, What was that? So he repeated himself, this time with clarity. Got a cigarette? Oh, no, I don't, was my terse reply. Then he mumbled something else, and once more I had to ask him to repeat what he just said. Got a couple dollars to get me home? He iterated. Nope, I do not, I replied, then broke away, wished him a good night, and skedaddled off to Rosenberg's. So there you go, Watson. He's a big fat phony, a bullshit artist, a scammer, never even brought up Carlson, who he proclaimed to love so much some 3 weeks back, and who's providing him with safe haven from the streets and the bad weather in spite of his own rotten health. I was tempted to ask him about Carlson, how his health is and so on, but since he tried to coax some money out of me right off the bat, no friendly greeting, no smile, nada, I figured why bother, and what did he mean by to get me home? Again, I saw no point in asking him questions of a comradely sort, though I wondered what he considered home. I thought he already had a home in my building. Is it possible these other vagrants hanging out with Carlson for the past several weeks had driven him out? Maybe even by Carlson's own wishes? Or is he perhaps being lorded over by these transients and has no control? There's been absolutely zilch disturbance coming out of his apartment. No noise, no hallway ruckus. Glob only knows what's going on with him. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. At any rate, a few minutes after I returned to my monk's cell, I looked out my window to see a terribly handsome brown-haired fellow fling some pebbles up at Carlson's window after calling up to it, Corn! Corn! I'm tempted to step out and offer him my half-empty bag of Boom Chicka Pop sea salt popcorn and say, well, you got what you wanted, so please shut the fuck up now. Some of us are trying to sleep. Subject, reply from my attorney. Date March 30th, mid-morning. I reviewed the documents, Mr. Kralin. Unfortunately, this is not something our office can help with. Please contact the San Francisco Bar Association. They should have free attorneys for cases like this. You will have 30 days to respond to the complaint. This is disappointing. And their attorney's cover letter says I have 20 days to respond, not 30. I was hoping she'd hook me up with another lawyer, but I got to do this on my own. Subject: just requested an attorney through San Francisco Bar Association's website. Date March 30th, late morning. They have an online form which asks for a brief description of my issue and my income level because they charge on a sliding scale. So considering I'm just living on Social Security, hopefully it'll be pro bono. Just requested an attorney through San Francisco's bar's website, March 30th afternoon. Watson wrote, "Good. Jesus, what a revolting development." I replied, "You can say that again, Watson." "You can say that again, Watson. The summons hints at my possibly being bigoted against Asian people, so they're playing the race card on top of everything else. However, I'm not worried, as the grievances are amateurish in their claims. Anyone can see through the game being played. Ambulance chaser quality. So I expect the plaintiff to drop the case soon enough once his attorney is confronted by whoever is my attorney. I can't find much of anything about the plaintiff's attorney. He's on LinkedIn, but very little is revealed. Meanwhile, I just emailed the following to my present attorney. Has nothing to do with that latest summons. Begin. Subject: living situation update. This may or may not be relevant to my lawsuit, but in case it is, I'm sending you this update. January 20th, our building manager, Kevin Bond, was carried off in an ambulance. He didn't return until yesterday, March 29th. I was surprised to see him still alive, as he has gotten markedly decrepit over the last 2 years and walked with a shuffle and stooped shoulders. During the last month of his absence, residents went without hot water except for a few hours each day. It has since been fixed as of 3 days ago, shortly after a building inspector placed a notice of violation in the utility room. Our maintenance man appears to be doing his best to stay on top of things. A resident down the hall from me, Carlson, now has a homeless person staying with him, Scooter, and other street people hanging out there too. They've all been quiet so far, and no disturbance from any of them anywhere in the building, but my concern is that Scooter has an explosive temper. Though he has yet to cause a problem in the building, prior to that he would often scream up at Carlson's window, start loud arguments, and in general disturb the peace late at night. This went on for several months, not every night, but sporadically, so it's a sketchy situation. I don't care to see him in the building or anywhere else for that matter. There are drugs involved, alcohol and meth, which doesn't help matters. I've been avoiding Scooter as best I can, which I started doing months before he ever moved into our building, for which he now has keys to the front gate and Carlson's apartment. He's recently begun acting friendly toward me, including an apology for past behavior, but I suspect it's more an act than anything sincere. I've seen him standing by the open gate now and then, talking to other indigents and inviting some inside. 2 nights ago he asked me for a couple of bucks when our paths crossed outside, but I turned him down. I hope he's not going to make this a habit. It's intimidating. I really don't want to associate with him at all, but he's impossible to avoid all the time for obvious reasons. I have no idea if the building manager knows what's going on with Carlson and guests, and there's no point in telling him about this, as he's pretty feeble these days, including long before he was rushed to the ER, possibly with senility involved. And as you know, other residents have serious gripes against management. I'm not the only one. Mr. Bond had to be assisted up the stairs yesterday, as he can't manage them on his own. He lives on the 3rd floor, and our elevator's been out of order for 2 years now. If he's not on his last legs, I'll eat my hat, and there is no sign of a replacement manager on the horizon. Just an hour ago, I applied online to see an attorney at San Francisco Bar, and they should get back to me tomorrow. Also, I am up to date with my escrow payments via BALA. Thanks for your attention. I hope this email wasn't a waste of your time. May your day go well and enjoy the weekend. Subject: keeping a steady hand on the tiller. Date March 30th, evening. After receiving my attorney's disappointing response, I simply replied, "Okay, I figured I'd have to find a different lawyer. I'll get on that right away. Thanks for checking out the summons." And here's her reply to my living situation update. "Thank you for this, Mr. Kralin. Please stay safe." And my response to that, I'll be fine, thanks. I've been through much worse and have come out unscathed. I just thought this update might be relevant since it regards management or lack thereof. My friend with the doggies now lives in a tiny cabin just 4 blocks away as of 2 months ago, so there's less worry about that. And it looks like he's not going to drop out and return to the streets. His attitude is much better these days, and his mood swings far less extreme, so that's good news. An ordeal and a half, though, over the years, helping him stabilize to reach this excellent point. I don't expect you to reply, as it's not my intent to distract you from your work. Signed, Zeke K. Holmes. P.S. The next passage from Brindlekin Tales Marshall will read tomorrow I have entitled A Crackerjack Powwow. 2 Xmas references in there, and very funny because we're into mid-December, so now the adventures are drifting toward the holiday season, and with that, the colorful shaman visitor who sat outside on a lovely square of cloth, and the traumatic string of atmospheric river inundations. He read last Friday's piece with dramatic vigor. Very nice. Well, it's always nice to be appreciated.